The site is commonly referred to as Coral Reef Commons and totals approximately 130 acres. Ram Realty owns approximately 80 acres of that and is currently planning for a mixed-use development, along with a significant amount of the area being preserved and managed in perpetuity. The Richmond Pine Rockland Complex encompasses over 4 square miles, of which over 70% of that is already under public ownership. The Coral Reef Commons site represents less than 3% of the overall Richmond Pine Rockland Complex. The important thing to remember here is that the development of the Coral Reef Commons site allows for the preservation and management of pine rockland habitat on site, so critical to this area of Miami-Dade County. Without the development, these preservation areas would continue to degrade and eventually provide no function or value for the environment or the public. Historically, this tract was part of the overall Richmond Naval Air Station property that was utilized for defense purposes dating back to World War II. In the 1960s, the University of Miami purchased portions of the property, and in the 1980s began to develop portions of the property for a medical research facility. Extensive surveys for federally endangered and threatened species have been conducted on the site. As a result, we are going through the Habitat Conservation Plan process with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That process requires us to address conservation measures and efforts to minimize effects to these species as part of the overall Habitat Conservation Plan. First, let's understand what happens without a Habitat Conservation Plan. Approximately 1/3 of the site has already been developed, and the other 2/3 of the site are natural communities. But when we say natural communities, these are unmanaged communities. They've been significantly infested with exotic plant species over years, including the Brazilian pepper tree behind me, and primarily the Burma reed over in here, which basically takes over and creates a monoculture in the habitat, displacing all your native flora and faunal species that would typically be found in these areas. What the Habitat Conservation Plan allows for is management of these areas. Right now, there's absolutely no management being conducted on these areas, and these areas will continue to degrade over time and in the foreseeable future provide no function for native flora and faunal species. Here we have a pineland croton plant, the single larvae host plant for the endangered Bartram scrub hairstreak butterfly. The Habitat Conservation Plan will allow for a greater carrying capacity for this butterfly post-development than currently exists today, and ensuring that a population of these butterflies exists into the future. We are standing here on one of the proposed commercial tracts associated with the Coral Reef Commons development. And another one of the benefits of the overall development, and specifically for this commercial tract, is a remediation of on-site contaminants documented on-site, such as the elevated arsenic levels associated with this historic incinerator. One of the major efforts in the site planning process was the development of an environmental constraints map to identify areas of higher quality habitat on site to avoid development from going into, and focusing the development on areas that have already been previously altered, such as this primate facility that you see behind me that was utilized and developed by the University of Miami for their medical research facility. What we are looking at here is a 4-acre area of on-site preserves that had the initial eradication of exotic species conducted approximately 6 months ago. Contrast that with the area to the right, and you can see the dense coverage primarily of Burma reed and exotic plant species colonizing the areas on site.